Good morning and welcome to Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern. My name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols, and I will be your host. Sorry for the roughness in my voice this morning. Went out and did a little bit of karaoke last night. So, yeah. We had a good time, though. We had a really, really good time. Went to a new place called, I hope I'm not mispronouncing it, Sharinga. It might be Churinga or Sharinga, but they are they're a restaurant, and they've got two different locations in the Atlanta and Greater Atlanta areas. It was really nice. We had a great time with our favorite KJ Constantine, and it was a lot of fun. And it's a little bit different. I'm used to like wait service, but it's more of a tapas type situation. So you kind of go to the bar and you get your drinks and you have a seat. It was really cool because people had their fur babies with them, and it was the cutest thing. This man, he had a doodle, like a not a labradoodle, but a doodle. It's so cute. So cute. And he was carrying around this dog like a little baby. It was adorable because the dog was just like, yes, 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 I am a princess. It was just it was the cutest thing, and so that was really cool, and somebody else had, like, a Great Dane. I think yeah, it was a Great Dane. Beautiful dog, just, oh, absolutely stunning, and so it was just a lot of fun, so we're looking forward to going back and hanging out with you guys, so thank you so much, Sharinga, for hosting a karaoke on a Tuesday night. So we're going to get into our programming and we're going to start with our kids' corner.
Bike, but he kept falling in his small backyard. Frustration filled his face. Barnes's dad knelt beside him, smiling. "It's okay, Barnes. Progress matters more than perfection. Just keep trying." After many tries, Barnes finally balanced for a few seconds. His smile was brighter than the sun. On a rainy day, Barnes practiced pedaling on the porch, pretending to ride through a sunny park. Barnes's friends cheered. "You're doing great, Barnes." Their encouragement fueled his effort. Days later, Barnes rode smoothly around the park, each wobble reminding him of his progress. Sitting by the park pond, Barnes realized progress is what makes every journey worth it. Progress over perfection. Every little step leads to big achievements. Keep going and you'll shine.
Yes, progress over perfection, because sometimes we want everything to be so perfect that it actually stops us from moving forward. I remember when I first started my podcast, the camera wasn't as great, right? So I had to get a better camera. And I just remember working with someone and their whole thing was like, "Whoa, we got to have this." And I was like, if I'm more focused on the aesthetics, right? How everything looks, I'll never really get to telling people the news and sharing with them, that what is happening around them. And so I wanted to focus more on that. And to me, that's the progress, right? Because perfection is in the eye of the beholder, and none of us are perfect, right? I mean, I've had times when the camera's fallen. I mean, stuff have happened. You guys have fought through with me with the internet not working great, right? When I've even had interviews with different people like the regenerative rancher, sorry, Casey, so sweet. And she just hung in there with me when my internet was going crashing and I had to reboot. And I was just like, oh my gosh, things are just so crazy right now. But you guys have hung in there with me. And so I just want to let you guys know I'm focused on progress, not perfection, because this show is not perfect by any means. I do not have a moderator. It's me, right? I'm producing, I'm coming up with the content, doing everything, switching in and out of videos, but I'm so appreciative of everybody that joins me every day from 7 to 9 a.m. And great news, we are up to 150 subscribers on YouTube. I know that may not seem like a lot to everybody, but to me, it is a wonderful accomplishment, and we've only got, you know, to grow from there. Oh, thank you, Riff. Riff says, "You can do it." Thank you so much. And thank you so much for joining us on YouTube this morning. So now we're going to get into honoring God with our body, just our daily prayer for the day. So, God, please guard our mind and our thoughts. God, help me to fix my thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. So, I will think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. God, please protect my ears and help me to listen to your voice. God, help me to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. God, please protect my eyes from sin's damage. God, I make a covenant with my eyes not to look lustfully. God, please speak life over my mouth. God, set a guard over my mouth. Lord, keep watch over the doors of my lips. God, please help my hands to serve generously. God, help me to do good to everyone and especially to those who belong to our family in the faith. God, please protect my reproductive organs. God, help me to honor you with my body. God, please protect my feet and help me walk in your path. God, let your word be a lamp for my feet and a light on my path. And I really do pray that, you receive that this morning because, hey, we're going into the holidays. And I just really want to pray for people out there who may be having a hard time over the holidays. We really don't think about that because a lot of times, people are trying to be festive and upbeat, but this is the time of year where people, unfortunately, they may take their lives or take the life of another person. I've personally experienced that. My sister had passed away a little over 10 years ago on Christmas Day. So I know what it's like to kind of have that not so happy feeling during this time of year, during this season. So I really want to just send prayers out to individuals right now that may be having a hard time, and just say that I get it and I'm with you and I understand and I'm praying for you, that you can get through this season and come into the new year and just know that as long as you're breathing, it is not over, right? As long as you're breathing, there is an opportunity to, take that next step and take that next step and just keep walking in that faith, right? Because your story's being written and don't give up. That's all I can say. Just please don't give up. You are heard, you are seen, you are loved, right? Those things. And then for those of us that are celebrating, I will say it like this: Festivus for the rest of us. I really like that saying that came from Seinfeld. So no matter what you're celebrating, Festivus for the rest of us. So that covers it, right? So hopefully you guys receive that this morning. And we're going to get into our first article. Now, we've been talking a lot about um, just some of the unfortunate fraud going on in Minnesota. And I came across this video from Fox News where they actually spoke to some of the other mayors because we've been talking so much about Minneapolis. We forget that there are actually other cities in Minnesota that may be, you know, kind of going through it, right? Within their state, within their cities, right? We haven't even considered them. And so this video really kind of just looks at their perspective of what's going on with the level of fraud that's been found out in Minnesota. And I also wanted to clarify the $18 billion number is the amount that had gone out just in, I want to say, how should I say it? Trying to think of the best way to put the terms of services, entitlement. That's where we go. The entitlement programs, right? We're talking about SNAP benefits or TANF or welfare, financial benefits, housing benefits, um, disability benefits, right? So we're looking at those individuals. So that's what was paid out. The claim is that about half of that 9 billion, I will say up to 9 billion, they're saying may have been a part of potential alleged fraud. Okay, so I just want to lay that out for me. So when you're hearing those two numbers, that's the case. That's the argument. It's not 18 billion, right? It's closer to approximately and allegedly 9 billion, but that's what they're looking at.
And there is some new pressure today on Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, as the feds say that fraud in his state could total $9 billion, up from the estimate of $1 billion. This thing is just absolutely exploding. We heard the $1 billion estimate a few weeks ago.
The magnitude of the fraud in Minnesota cannot be overstated. It's staggering amounts of money that have been lost. But it's not just about the money that's been stolen and wasted. This is a problem that's caused all of us to question what kind of state we live in.
So now almost 100 Minnesota mayors have written to Governor Walz and state lawmakers. Quote, fraud, unchecked spending, and inconsistent fiscal management in St. Paul have trickled down to our cities, reducing our capacity to plan responsibly, maintain infrastructure, hire and retain employees, and sustain core services without overburdening local taxpayers. Two of those mayors are going to join us in just a moment. But first to Chief Washington correspondent Mike Emanuel, reporting live from D.C. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Martha. Yeah, the chairman of the powerful House Oversight Committee is demanding answers. James Comer says his committee is expanding its investigation into massive fraud and money laundering in Minnesota's social services programs. Comer's asking for records from the Treasury and Justice Departments, including suspicious activity reports and interviews with state officials. Comer says honest whistleblowers were ignored.
The state employees who were the first to blow the whistle on the fraud, they claim that they notified Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellison years ago. So this has been going on for years. The state employees have been blowing the whistle and alerting the governor, and he's turned a blind eye.
With some suggesting the fraud in Minnesota could be as much as $9 billion, Governor Walz says that's an exaggeration.
I'll take accountability for it, but what you're seeing here is you're seeing a weaponization. We'll continue to fix it. They're going to continue to come up with numbers that don't have it there, and it's sensationalized. I don't expect anything different from this administration.
The letter from those Minnesota mayors notes, quote, our state owes it to our citizens to practice responsible fiscal management and to stop taxing our families, seniors, and businesses out of Minnesota. Chairman Comer says the governor was aware but did not act because he did not want to offend Minnesota's Somali population. Martha?
Mike, thank you very much. Let's bring in two of the nearly 100 mayors who wrote to Governor Walz and state lawmakers about fraud. Like most Minnesota mayors, they're nonpartisan when they run for mayor. But Jackson Purfirst from Cross Lake has volunteered for the RNC, and Andrea Zupanicic from Babbitt is running for state Senate as a Republican. Welcome to both of you. It's great to have you with us today. I just want to put up on screen here. This is the $9 billion in Minnesota fraud schemes. So on the left-hand side is what this money was supposed to be for. And we'll go tight on here so you can see it. Feeding children, helping recovering addicts, helping disabled adults. This was during COVID for the most part. But the money went to wire transfers to China and East Africa, a villa in the Maldives, luxury vehicles, and designer jewelry. You can see the list here. But you hear what Governor Walz is saying, Mayor Purfirst. He's saying, this is up to like the local, the local management here. And he's taking the blame off of himself as governor. What do you say to that?
Martha, that is just absurd. I mean, Minnesotans have been fleeced to the tune of $9 billion. This is done from fraud right out of the Minnesota Capitol in St. Paul, as well as the policies that are being championed and brought across the finish line by the legislature. Both the legislature and the governor are at fault for the fraud and the constant policies that are taxing Minnesotans.
Let's put up Minnesota's rank among key growth indicators. Very anemic and devastating growth numbers actually across the state that have happened under this governor. But Mayor Zupanicic, let me ask you about something that Mike Emanuel reported at the end there, this question about whether or not the governor
I want to pause it right there. So the GDP growth from 2007 to 2019, they were ranked 18th. And now from 2019 to 2024, so that was like a 5-year cycle, they're ranked 33rd. Job growth, they were ranked 20th. And from 2019 to 2024, they're ranked 39th. Labor force growth, they were at 22. They are now 40th. Per capita income growth, 25th, they're down to 33rd. And growth in median household income, they were 21st and they're down to 46th. That's sad. Hopefully they'll be able to turn this around in Minnesota.
Looked the other way on potentially $9 billion of fraud because he didn't want to point out that the majority of those who were accused and then convicted in these cases were from the Somali community. What do you say to that?
Well, I don't understand what difference that makes to anyone else. How would anyone else be approached or confronted if they stole money from someone? They would all be acknowledged and have to go forward with the consequences of their actions. You know, we're sitting here bearing the brunt of everything: tax hikes, gas taxes, property taxes, boating taxes, gas taxes. We can't go anywhere. We can't go fishing. And he's afraid to offend someone. Well, what about me? I know my town, we're all offended that we're paying for all of this fraud to go on, and it's just coming out now when they've known about it for years. What's going to happen now? And let's just call it what it is. It's stealing. It's not, It's stealing. You're stealing from the state of Minnesota. You're stealing from the taxpayers that make this state the great state that it is. And how are we going to recoup from that?
I want to play this. This is Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison put out this video on Friday talking about how effective he's been in fighting scams in Minnesota. Watch this.
Scammers think Minnesotans are easy targets. They are wrong.
When scammers go after our seniors, students, or families, I step in fast and we shut them down.
If you plan to scam Minnesotans, think again. You're stepping into the wrong ring.
You know, who thought this was a good idea, Mayor Purfirst? This went out on Friday.
You know what, Martha? I really have no clue. I wish that attorney Keith Ellison would get back to work. I mean, this is insane. He is not doing anything to protect Minnesotans that are getting fleeced by Governor Walz and the current policies coming out of the Capitol.
All right, we'll see where this goes. He would like to win another governor's race, and we'll see where it goes. Thank you both, mayors from Minnesota.
Thank you,
we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. And that's the sad part, right? And I want to pull something up for you guys because I did go over this before. Regarding the fraud in Minnesota. And a lot of this fraud was actually happening prior to, you want to say Governor Walz being governor. You know, he kind of, how should I say, he walked into a mess. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't a situation where, okay, he became the governor and then all this fraud just happened. No, it was actually happening on the way in. The sad part is, and the other question goes to, who was facilitating this? Like I've always said, somebody has to push the button internally for the fraud to happen externally. The fraudsters aren't working. Maybe they are. I don't know. Within the state. And a lot of these states, we have to remember, they have a section of people, right, that determine where those federal dollars go to these different programs. So there is somebody on the inside reviewing the applications and pushing the button and paying these different groups, whether they're nonprofits or what have you, to execute these programs, right? SNAP, TANF, which is your physical money welfare programs. Feeding Your Future, that was a totally different program under maybe the CARES Act or Inflation Reduction Act, right? So that they could expand feeding children that were not going to school, but relied on those breakfast and lunch programs to have food during the day, right? And exposed that. But let me show you the timeline. So here's the thing. It says these schemes often involving fake companies and billing for non-existent services have defrauded over 1 billion in taxpayer funds since early 2020s, right? With roots in pandemic era lax oversight because we were all so upset about what was happening. People were at home, people were working, we were trying to work our way through the pandemic. There was lax oversight because we were just trying to make sure that people were okay. I'll just say it like that. We're trying to make sure that people were okay, right? So many perpetrators are, unfortunately, from Minnesota's Somalia diaspora community, leading to heightened political scrutiny, federal probes, and allegations of funds reaching al Shabaab terrorists in Somalia. The scandal has evolved from isolated cases to a statewide epidemic, with over 78 defendants charged and 59 convictions as of late 2025. Now, I did this search early in December, but see, in 2009, early vulnerability, were identified. So this was pre Tim Walz. Okay, he was not the governor in 2009. And a state report flags risk of the federal child care assistance program, setting the stage for later exploitation. And no major actions were taken. So they knew, right? He was made aware, like on his way in, like, sir, we've got an issue with the fraud that's going on now. But then in 2020, fraud schemes proliferated during the pandemic because, again, there was low oversight, but the money was coming in. So loose federal rules on child nutrition and social services enable fake nonprofits to bill millions for unprovided meals and care. Feeding Our Future alone siphons $250 million. Warnings from DHS to Governor Tim Walz's administration are allegedly ignored. So in 2020, he wasn't paying attention to this, nor was his administration, because they lived in fear of, how should I say it? In the best way possible. They were fearful of offending, as the mayor said, offending the Somali population, right? They didn't want to say, hey, we're targeting your community because this is where the fraud is coming from. But at the same time, there's a way to do that and say, hey, we've noticed that there is fraud widespread, because it was widespread. It wasn't just the Somali community, I'm pretty sure, right? It wasn't. But we don't know everybody involved. All we know is, for the investigation that they've done, the majority of the people were of Somali descent. That's what we know, but we don't know everybody else that was involved. So that's where the spotlight goes. So January 2022, federal raids launched a major probe. FBI and IRS raided 20 locations in Minneapolis tied to Feeding Our Future. Initial charges against 5 defendants. Media coverage begins locally. So this stuff was years ago. Tim Walz knew that this was going on. But the question is, what were you doing to isolate this and stop this? You knew. So there is no, well, we're taking responsibility for it. Are you? Are you sure? Are you really? Or were you just were people just depending on you to win being the vice president, right? Because he would be the vice president right now had he and VP Harris, if they won this past election. Where would this fraud be? Will we even know that this was going on? And people were sounding the alarm. Now in 2023, those were the first major convictions. Early guilty pleas in Feeding Our Future. One defendant sentenced to 17.5 years. National outlets like NPR cover it as one of the largest COVID fraud cases. Did you hear about this really in 2023? Not really. Not really. Unfortunately, it was very suppressed. Now, in December of 2023, okay, so we're still in the same year, largest Medicaid fraud charges. Now, this is outside of Feeding Our Future. The AG, Keith Ellison, indicts 3 individuals for $11 million in Medicaid theft via fake home care billing, the largest case in state's history. So within that state. So they were basically saying we're providing these services, and they weren't providing the services, but they were collecting the check. So who, again, there was somebody pushing the button and sending and cutting the check, basically, to this. Who is that person, and why wasn't there more oversight? Again, 2024 expanded Medicaid charges, 5 more charged in related schemes, totaling $10 million in overbilling and kickbacks. September 2025, so we get to this year, housing fraud indictments. 8 defendants charged with $2.7 million scheme defrauding the Housing Stabilization Services Program, when you hear HSS. Okay. And then in March of this year, Feeding Our Future trial convictions. So there were more people. The nonprofit founder, Ami Bach, and a restaurant owner, Amy Bach, sorry. They were convicted of $250 million in fraud. NPR and other outlets reported it as a shame of Minnesota. Over 50 guilty pleas by now. Now, this was March of this year, and I saw YouTubers, sounding the alarm. I was playing their videos back in August, like, hey, this is going on, but there wasn't anything really. Nothing was happening, right? And that could have been because of investigations happening. Now, in November, we found out the terrorist links, alleged national escalation. Federal investigators warned some funds reached Al-Shabaab. City Journal publishes exposed the largest funder of Al-Shabaab is the Minnesota taxpayer. Trump posts on Truth Social, Minnesota, a hub of fraudulent money laundering, revokes TPS for Somalis. DHS employees accuse Walz of retaliation against whistleblowers. So he was informed in 2020. Then he started retaliating against those same people. But he wants to stand before us and say, it's being weaponized. We're taking responsibility. Are you? Like, both things can't be true at the same time. You can't be taking responsibility and shutting down the whistleblowers. And you were already told in 2020 that this was happening. Sir, if you guys reelect this gentleman, because he is running for the governorship again if he doesn't step down, just saying, are you going to keep this guy in office? Minnesota, you need to do better. And there were people basically doing the tourism, right? From, I think that was Maine and also Boston. They were coming, to Minnesota to figure out, like, oh, we can do this. Oh, let's do this. Fleecing the American people. That's the problem. And I'm not saying that fraud doesn't go on in every facet of these entitlement programs, because they do. They actually do happen. And I'm going to play another video for you guys. And I've talked about this before, how homelessness is big business, basically. But as you can see, again, going all the way down to December 4th, X discussions intensify. Polls show 56% of Minnesotans believe Walz hasn't done enough. Federal probes expand to SBA linked networks. Yeah. So, the New York Times has covered it. Fox News has covered it. The National Review, NPR, their public radio station has covered it. ABC, CBS, Newsweek, PBS, City Journal of the Manhattan Institute, and The Hill. So some of these lean right, some of them lean left, some of them are center. So everybody was like, hey, this is a problem. This is a whole issue, right? Now, mainstream investigative, which you get NPR, PBS, and NYT, they had balanced fact heavy. They're about 30%. And it drove an initial depth in NYT. The New York Times alone sparked 40% of recent spikes. Right. So they were talking about this, and they've been talking about it for months. And, a lot of this, it kind of takes time for it to get to us, right? The general public, because they have to do these investigations. And by the time they get it to us, they've done some or most of their investigations. When they bring it out to the public, they're actually, I don't want to say fishing, but they're looking for more people to come forward and say, okay, what did you know and when did you know it? And it's unfortunate because Governor Walz, he can't hide from this anymore. You can't hide from this, and you've got a choice. And I think your option is resign and step down. Because if you keep trying to push back, okay, then you might be facing some federal charges. Because whatever happened on your watch, as you said, you'll take responsibility for it. There's only one way to take responsibility for it. Because trust me, I'm pretty sure there's an email chain that went back and forth. I'm sure these conversations were not held offline. Sir, resign. Take your retirement package, whatever they're going to give you, and just walk away. Because I think if you try to hold the line for this one, you're going to take the fall. You're going to take the fall. And there's a lot of people that would be okay with it. So, and I'll throw in allegedly, right? Because we still have to say alleged, because he has not been indicted for any wrongdoing. But there's a lot of implications there. So, now we're going to move on to our next set of articles. Again, this is about homelessness, and I'm framing it as big business only because I've been talking about this again for a couple of months. What happens a lot with the nonprofit organizations, and they've actually, and someone in this video, he coins it the nonprofit industrial complex. I was like, wow, okay. Because they do not have to put the lion's share of the money they receive towards the issue they're trying to solve. So if they've got $1 million, they can keep 900,000 and put 100,000 towards the homeless, as opposed to being the opposite. You can only keep 100,000, but you have to put 900,000 towards the issue of homelessness. Homelessness has actually gone up, not down. So we're throwing billions of dollars at a devastating issue. In my opinion, it is very devastating to have people literally camped out on the street and living on the street, right? But the people that said that they want to solve the issue, they're buying $1 million homes. How does that work? But that's what's happening. And that's the sad part.
$18 billion in Los Angeles alone last year to combat homelessness. You want to know where that money went? That money went to these trash nonprofits who have a bunch of executives making $500,000 a year. You're working for a nonprofit dealing with homelessness. That's my money. That's my parents' money. Okay? That is the hardworking people of California paying incredibly high taxes that go to what? So yeah, I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. And honestly, just experiencing what I've seen on the ground in California has made me question a lot about left-wing ideology.
What's going on, everybody? Appreciate you guys pulling up today. Hit the like button for me on the way in. We got to talk about it, man. We have to talk about what's going on out in California. Obviously, they have a major homelessness issue out there. And there's been, you wouldn't believe how much money has been spent to help solve that issue, but it's not being solved. In all actuality, it's actually being exacerbated. I have a multitude of clips to get into. We got to get into it. We got to talk about it, because we also got to talk about the nonprofit business scam, fraud, grift, whatever you want to call it. We got to talk about that, because it is a major problem in this country. And honestly, I think it is something that needs to be changed, and it needs to be changed ASAP. Will it? Probably not, but should it? Absolutely. Hit that like button, share this video, subscribe to the channel. Let's get into it.
$3 billion sent to LA County over 4 years is completely unaccounted for. That's $2.3 billion that could have been used to clean up this or find housing for people who live like this. Taxpayers have forked over tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars to fix it. And people are stealing it?
It's unbelievable. And, it's probably been going on for a very long time, but unfortunately, no one's really looked at it until recently. Before this position, I was in the state legislature, and we would ask a lot of questions about the billions of dollars being spent every year to solve homelessness. And we can all see with our eyes and ears that it wasn't being solved, and the money wasn't going to the people who needed it most. So one of the first things I did after being appointed as the U.S. Attorney here in L.A. was to create the Homeless Fraud and Corruption Task Force. We were starting from the bottom up, and we began brand new investigations with the IRS and the FBI, and it's already culminated in 2 separate indictments, and I can assure you that more will come.
In the 2 indictments you've announced thus far, in one case, somebody was taking this money that was meant to build homes for the homeless and spending it on things like tickets to Coachella concert, jewelry, and a Beverly Hills mansion.
It's frankly outrageous, and this goes to show when you hand out billions of dollars with little to no oversight, there are people out there that will take advantage, and that's always been our suspicion, is that there's been very little oversight or accountability to the individuals who receive this money. Most of the money goes out to nonprofits or developers who claim they're going to use the money to build housing, and what we saw in these 2 investigations, that's not where the money went, and it was used to pay one individual's American Express bill. In these 2 cases represent over a $50 million loss, and that's again scratching the surface. We have many more investigations open that I cannot get into, but we are going to follow the money. We're going to follow every dollar, and we want to make sure the money went to its intended objective, which is to assist the homeless. And if any of it was diverted for personal use or other use that wasn't authorized, we intend to criminally prosecute those individuals. And
do you think it will happen? Maybe, maybe not. But this next video I'm about to show you, the fraud aspect of things, actually pretty easy to uncover. Pretty easy. I want you guys to listen to this brother here because he breaks it down. Before we end this video, we got to talk about the nonprofits though. We got to talk about it. Check this out.
How much waste, fraud, and abuse is there in the world of homeless services? Well, I've been in the field for almost 20 years. I can say this. Fraud is rare. Fraud, it's easy to spot fraud, I can tell you that. And organizations don't want to work with these folks. But waste is the rule. Let me tell you what I mean. Let's say you were paid to fix your neighbor's fence. If your neighbor came home and the fence wasn't fixed, would the neighbor give you money? I imagine that they wouldn't. In the world of homeless services, there is no fix the fence. There is no end date. There is no final pothole that you filled. It is never ending. It is an escalator to nowhere. So when America right now, I've never seen them more frustrated about what's called the nonprofit industrial complex, where this record-breaking amount of funding is going into a field and the problem isn't getting solved. Well, it's never going to get solved the way the current system is. Why? Yep. Because no one is going to take responsibility for actually solving the problem. Nonprofits are going to talk about how great the work that they do is, and sure, they do great work. But if you're actually expecting to solve the problem, it is never going to happen the way the system currently is. We can fund it 3 times what we're funding now, and it won't solve the problem. Why? Because there's no expectation that you actually do.
No incentive either.
So call that what you will. I don't see that as fraud. I see that this is how the system works, and nonprofits have figured it out, that they're going to get funded for activity, not outcomes. And this is what we're getting. And I understand why the larger general public is frustrated about this. They're seeing homelessness. They're seeing how it is impacting their community. And they're also seeing a whole bunch of nonprofits with their hands out saying, we can help. And that doesn't look like the fence is ever going to get fixed. So I don't blame folks for being frustrated, but I don't blame the nonprofits either, because it's never been expected of them. And this has to change.
Now, with that being said, I understand exactly where he's coming from, but at the same time, I got to put some blame on these individuals who start these nonprofits who are essentially exploiting the system. That's essentially what's happening. Start a nonprofit, exploit the system. And there's no incentive to actually solve the problem. Matter of fact, if you solve the problem, you basically just ended your nonprofit. There's no more need for you if you actually solve the problem. So they don't incentivize these people to actually do their job at a high level, but they incentivize activity towards, even if that activity is just a bunch of nothing that actually solves nothing. But they can showcase, hey, we hired some people, we did do this, we did that. It's just a money grab. Now, what I want you guys to understand and get an understanding about when it comes to nonprofit organizations in the United States of America, I bet you guys didn't know this, but there is no required spend. There's no fixed dollar amount, and there's no requirement to spend a fixed dollar amount on the problem that you are trying to solve. Meaning, you can raise $1 million for, let's say, youth homelessness. Okay? You raise $1 million. You got to hire some people, right? You can spend $950,000 on labor, hiring people, and office space and all this other kind of stuff. You got to pay your board as well. And only put $50,000 towards youth homelessness. Now you raised $1 million, and that's how you have, people in these nonprofits, board members alike, making $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year in salary because there's no required or no requirement to spend a fixed amount of money, on the issue. There's no percentage requirement. So when these people start these nonprofits, basically you can take money in. You don't have to worry about paying taxes because for the most part, you're going to be exempt. And there's no percentage that you must pay towards or invest in whatever it is that you're trying to do. You just have to, make some good faith efforts in solving the problem. Now, the industry norm, 60 to 75%, is, considered the industry norm, but it's not a mandatory. It's not a mandatory. So think about that. There's no incentive to solve the problem. There's no requirement as to say, hey, you bring in a certain amount of money, there's a certain percentage that you have to pay. There's no requirements around that. And the way the system is set up right now, it doesn't reward you for solving the problem. It just rewards you for doing something in reference to solving the problem, but you don't actually have to solve the problem. Okay? Now, they do say that there is an exception for private foundations. Private foundations, they have a legal spending requirement. Private foundations. But regular nonprofits don't. This is crazy. And that's why nothing ever gets solved. And that's why everybody and their mama is trying to start one of these nonprofit organizations because you can bring in money. You don't have to worry about paying taxes. There's nobody to tell you that you have to spend a certain amount of money. There's no real regulations around how the money is spent, who you can hire, how much you can pay those people, and where this money gets funneled out to. There's no regulations around it. It's literally the wild, wild west right now. And that's why everybody and their mama is trying to do this because it's a cash grab, especially if you can get money from the federal government. This is crazy. This is crazy. It doesn't make sense. If the president could do something about this. Seriously. I'm a big fan of nonprofits, but you got to put some spending regulations around it, or people are just going to take advantage of the system.
California spent $24 billion on homelessness.
Now I wanted to pause it right there just to say thank you for everybody that's joining us on YouTube and X and Facebook and Sincerely Lawless. Good morning to you too and happy holidays. Look, the unfortunate part is he is right, people are exploiting nonprofit organizations, unfortunately. Now, there are some organizations that actually do help people. I'm not saying that there aren't those nonprofits that do help people. I've seen them. I mean, I even know people that have nonprofits that do help people. The problem is the ones exploiting the nonprofit organizational system, right, that don't do the work. And we can tell with homelessness because homelessness has gone up, not down. It's gotten worse, not better. Okay, and that's across the board, just within the United States. And when they count homeless people, they are counting people living in their cars and working. There were I think had an article like a couple of years ago that I heard about where someone was making close to 90,000 a year living in their car, and the reason is because they had an eviction on their credit. They couldn't get an apartment, but they were making $90,000 a year and couldn't get an apartment. Now that's scary, but they still weren't making enough to buy a house or even a condo. Again, because it's a credit issue. So what do we do in those situations, right? It would seem like they could put a nonprofit in place to work and almost be like a backer. You know how veterans have the backing of the VA loans or FHA, and putting in a system to help people sustain, right, their home or apartment, or help them get in. And they have organizations. I want to say it's called NACA, where they help people with low down payments get into a house, right? So there are organizations out there trying to help people. But again, there are other organizations out there exploiting the system. And so this was more so focused on exploiting the system. Now, the president, unfortunately, can't do a lot about what's happening right now, because this goes back to, it's even out of, I don't want to say it's outside of the House and the Senate, because yes, they could put more parameters around the nonprofit organizations and what they have to produce. But see, that money is disseminated to the state level, and further that to the local level, to the county level, to the city level. And they can put programs in place for people using federal dollars, right? Going to an organization that says, hey, we're going to help, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. It comes back to who's monitoring these organizations that say they're going to do the work, and who's really auditing, right? And who's doing the compliance and really holding these organizations accountable. It's truly about accountability. And in my opinion, whenever you're using somebody else's money to do something, yeah, there should definitely be some accountability. And we really don't see it happening. And that's what we need to see happen. There needs to be a transition, because I would love to see homelessness go down, especially in California, because it's an epidemic. I mean, I grew up in Orange County, and I remember going back to visit just a few years ago and looking at the riverbed basin. And sometimes that riverbed, it fills up with water, but there were encampments of people for miles living down there. And that's the best that they could do, because what else are they going to do? Right? At least they have community. But what started happening was a lot of, unfortunately, there was drugs and there was different things going on, and they were affecting the people, that were housed in a very close proximity. So some of those encampments were taken down, some of them weren't, some of them were left there. I was very concerned because those basins do fill up with water. Every couple of years they do have, just floods that happen in California. So what happens to those people and their stuff when that happens, right? So there's this danger on each side, but these organizations say, hey, we're going to come in and we're going to champion it. And like you said, somebody's given $1 million and they raise the funds, they only have to use a small percentage of it toward the issue that they say they're trying to solve, with no accountability, because there isn't any. There's no accountability, there's no compliance, there's no measure. So that needs to be put in place by the people that actually disseminate to the program, right? That's where it has to be. It's like, if I'm going to give you $1 million to solve an issue, and I see you're spending at least like $900,000 on just administrative costs, I'm going to ask, like, why are you spending so much in administrative costs and not spending it on the people that actually need the services? That would be my first question if I'm giving you this money. But see, that's not what's happening. And that's what needs to change.
$4 billion. You know what happened? The homeless population went up. More tents, more encampments, more people dying on the streets than ever before. So I started asking, where did the money go? Because now LA is under federal investigation for homeless fraud and corruption.
Even though the developer received all the money from the state, the developer did not complete the construction.
Yesterday, I showed you $54 billion in California welfare fraud, no accountability. Today, it gets even worse. The homeless industrial complex exposed. Let me show you the receipts. Let's play a little game.
Now he said 54 billion in welfare fraud. Okay, that is like eclipsing what's happening in Minnesota. But again, it's a larger state. And like I said, fraud is going on everywhere. It's been going on for a long time. So when we're just zeroing in on the Somali community in Minnesota, it's like this is happening everywhere. This isn't just there. It just seems it's a lot larger because it is a smaller community, right? And it's such an exorbitant amount of money. I think individuals of Somali descent may make up roughly approximately 200,000 people within the United States, and that's everywhere they are. Seattle, Georgia, Minnesota, which has the largest population. I think there's some individuals maybe in Boston, Massachusetts. But California, 54 billion, he just let it roll off his tongue like, yeah, that's just happening. It's like, whoa, that's crazy.
Let's play follow the money. Gavin Newsom made homelessness his signature issue. Billions in spending press, conferences, bold promises. We're going to solve this, is what he said. So what happened? In 2022, the California State Auditor released a bombshell report. They tracked $24 billion in homeless spending across 5 years. What did they find? The state had no idea where the money went. No tracking system, no accountability measures, no way to measure if any of it actually worked.
$24 billion in tax money on the homeless crisis, and they are just beginning to audit the programs.
$24 billion taxpayer dollars, and they couldn't tell you if it helped a single homeless person off the streets. But that's not even the worst part. Steve Hilton called it the homeless industrial complex. Here's how California homeless spending actually works.
And it just keeps getting worse, Pete.
Right, Trace. 3 data points. California is 10% of the country's population, 30% of the country's homelessness, and 50% of the country's what we call unhoused homeless, those who are living in these encampments, those who are living on the street. This is a real policy failure, and it starts with the governor as well as our mayors here.
The state gives billions to counties, counties give it to cities, cities give it to nonprofits, nonprofits give it to subcontractors. And somewhere along the way, the money disappears. Administrative costs, executive salaries, consultants, conferences, overhead. Everyone gets paid except the people sleeping on the street. California Underground reported that Los Angeles spent over $800,000 per homeless housing unit. $800,000 for a single unit. Now, you know what you could buy for $800,000? A house, an actual house. But they spent it on one unit, and the homeless population still went up. And here's what makes this criminal. Now, the feds are involved. LA is under federal investigation for homeless fraud and corruption. The FBI is asking the same question we've been asking. Where the hell did the money go? This isn't speculation. LA City Council members have already gone down. Bribery, fraud, corruption exposed.
If the powerful and privileged in this city can violate the law with impunity, what does that say to the rest of us in Los Angeles?
The homeless money was a slush fund, pay to play, contracts going to connected developers, consulting fees going to political friends. California Underground covered it. 253,000 people watched the video because they knew something was wrong. Now here's the scheme. Developer donates to politician. Politician approves homeless housing. Developer gets the contract, charges $800,000 per unit, builds almost nothing, and everybody gets rich. The homeless person, well, he's still on the street. Stay tuned because it gets even worse. It's not just in Los Angeles. San Francisco, down the street, spent $1.1 billion on homelessness in 1 year. One city, $1 billion. Homeless population? There's poop maps to prove it's still growing. Sacramento, San Diego, Oakland, same story everywhere. California's homeless crisis is exposed everywhere, and still, no statewide investigation, no accountability, no consequences.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. That is crazy, crazy work. When you think about the amount of money that they've spent just on homelessness, the unhoused. That is crazy. What do you think we're going to find if they ever submit to that SNAP audit? How much fraud, how much waste do you think we're going to find there? Oh my goodness. That's why they're suing. That's why they're suing, because they do not want the American people to know how poorly ran that state is. They don't want the American people to know how bad off the stronghold, the liberal stronghold, the Democratic stronghold of California actually is. It seems like everywhere that these people are in charge, it's a hot daggone mess, man. I want to hear from you guys in the comment section. Hit the like button. It is a major problem.
Yeah, so really grateful for that recap by Righteous Perspective. And Uncle Coolwater says the Somalis are sharing the unethical practice of how to fraud the government to every group of Somalians across the country. And that's unfortunate because they talked about fraud tourism and how other ethnic groups outside of Somalis, because the individuals that were found guilty, I want to say it was either Maine or Massachusetts, they were of Haitian descent. So they weren't even of Somali descent. But again, these are individuals from other countries that do not share American values. And you kind of would ask, like, why are they doing this? Because a lot of these individuals were brought into our country and they were not vetted. If you are a refugee from another country, and I will use Somalians as an example, they're not vetted. So you don't know if they have criminal records. You don't know if they are people who align with American values, right? They are bringing their value system here, and they exploited the welfare system, right? But again, it's happening in California. 54 billion eclipses 9 billion. Sorry, it's 5 times the amount. I'm just saying it is. But we're not looking at that. We're not looking at that part. And Dyslexia says, why can't there be a budget online in real time? Let's see when and where the money goes. It's the House of Glass. It is because the NGOs or nonprofits, right? Because you've got nonprofits and then you have what they call non-governmental organizations. That's where the NGO comes in, right? Because they're not governmental organizations. So they could be nonprofits, right? Considering in that lingo, they don't have to disclose anything because, again, as long as they're spending some of the money on the issue, there's no accountability to actually produce results. This is how people get rich in the nonprofit space. They don't have to pay taxes. They do have some accountability of where the money is going, but there's no accountability to actually fix what they're getting the money for to fix, if that makes any sense to anybody out there. They're able to just get the money. And it's so sad. It truly, truly is. Now, we're coming upon the 8 o'clock hour, and it is open mic. So if anybody would like to join me on stage, if you need a link, just let me know in the chat, and I will either direct message it to you on X, or I can email it to you at unfilteredvisionnews@gmail.com. But you got to tell me that you've emailed me while we're doing the show so I can go there and send you the link. So with that, we're going to take a quick break. And when we return, we'll get into some more news. And whoever, again, wants to join me on stage to share their opinions on what we've gone over in the first hour, I would definitely welcome your perspective. So thanks again for joining me here on Unfiltered Vision News, and we will see you on the other side.
The browsers of today are broken. They've been overtaken by a barrage of sneaky and annoying ads, trackers that follow your habits, and cookies that build profiles, and all sorts of other internet clutter that's taking precedence over the content that you want to see. In fact, these useless bytes can take up to a whopping 50% of page load times, with a third of it anxiously trying to learn more about you. To make matters worse, some ad blockers are even letting ads through when large advertisers pay them. But do you really want a leaky ad blocker? It's because of these very reasons that we developed Brave, a new browser that kicks internet crud to the curb and makes it faster, safer, and better to surf the web than your current browser. With Brave, everything you need is built right in. We integrated technology that automatically blocks trackers, annoying ads, and shields everything that can cramp your style and destruct your privacy. With it, you can expect increased speeds nearly 2 times faster on laptops and up to 4 times faster on mobile. And unlike any other browser, Brave allows you to support your favorite publishers with automatic micropayments, so it's a win-win for you and your favorite sites. To top it all off, Brave is open source, because we truly believe it's our web and we need to fix it together. So ask yourself this question: do you want a web browser made for the internet of today? If so, try Brave. It's faster, safer, and ad-free.
And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me here on Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern. My name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols, and I will be your host. And it is the 8 o'clock hour. And if anyone, again, would like to join me on the show, I will send you a mic, and you can join me to talk about any of the topics that have been discussed this morning, or another topic that you would like to share and bring to the attention of the Unfiltered Vision News community. With that, we're going to get into some more headlines from all sides. And one that I found really interesting. Well, this is interesting as well. Like, Turning Point hosts its first national conference since Charlie Kirk's death. And it's very interesting because it's like he's only been gone for about 3 months. Right? It happened in September. It's December. And I'm like, wow. Look, I don't know. I told my husband, I was like, if something like that happened to you, no one would probably see me for about 6 months. Like, you just wouldn't see me. I'd be devastated. I probably wouldn't be able to talk. I wouldn't be able to go anywhere if I had small children. I mean, I respect how Erica Kirk is handling her grieving and just moving forward with the organization. But I know personally for me, I wouldn't be able to do it. So kudos to her. But I was really concerned about this, where the Supreme Court, they blocked Trump's National Guard deployment in Chicago. So the Supreme Court voted on Tuesday to block Donald Trump's National Guard deployment to the Chicago area. So here's the details. And the 6-3 decision was unsigned, but appeared to be favored by Justices Amy Coney Barrett, Ketanji Jackson, Alina Kazan, Brett Kavanaugh, John Roberts, and Sonia Sotomayor. Justices Samuel Alito, Neil Gorsuch, and Clarence Thomas dissented. Interesting that it was unsigned. So the decision affirms District Court Judge April Perry's October ruling that temporarily blocked federalization efforts in Illinois. And here's my thing. The National Guard, they cannot exercise any type of law, right? Like I said, in my opinion, they're there to be security so that the police and ICE can actually do their jobs. Like, they're holding off other people, right? To be more so a show of force, like, hey, we're here. You guys need to stand down, general public, so that these individuals can just do their jobs. right? It's like an extra level of security. They can't arrest anybody. They can't take anybody down. Like, that's not their position. Their position is just to be there to be a show of force, not to be forceful, if that makes sense. So the key quote, the court document states, at this preliminary stage, the government has failed to identify a source of authority that would allow the military to execute the laws in Illinois. The court appeared to conclude that National Guard deployment was justified because laws can realistically be imposed with regular forces. Now, for context, Trump has deployed the National Guard to multiple U.S. cities since his election, including Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, California. The federalization efforts were launched to lower cities' crime rates and impose immigration enforcement, but have since called the limits of the Posse Comitatus Act into question. National Guard deployments in Illinois began in late September, prompting an October lawsuit from local officials who suggested that Trump overstepped his power. Now, this is how the media covered it. News media coverage was similar across the political spectrum, with many outlets framing the decision as a significant loss for Trump. Outlets such as The Hill, which is center bias, suggested the ruling may snowball into other cities with similar federalization measures have been imposed. The Washington Examiner, that leans right, noted that the Trump administration has an overwhelmingly successful year on the emergency docket, though the past week has seen two key losses. NBC, that leans left, more negatively called the National Guard deployment characteristic of Trump's aggressive and unprecedented use of executive power. In my opinion, again, the National Guard was pretty much just being used as a show of force, not that they would be forceful, if that makes any sense. Like that's not their job to put their hands on anybody, tackle anybody, take anybody down. It's just like, oh, the National Guard is here. We need to be on our P's and Q's, right? So that the police and ICE and anybody else that's there can just do their jobs. Because it has been horrific for some of these ICE agents. You got people jumping on their cars, standing in front of their cars, blowing whistles up in their ears, almost interfering in what they're supposed to be doing, right? In capturing these people who've been released by the local municipalities, because a lot of times, even if someone who's undocumented is here, they're not holding them. They're releasing them back out into the general public, which forces ICE into the general community to pick up these individuals. Like, they're disappearing people. No, they're picking up people that already were arrested, that have a record, people that they're looking for. And because the local municipalities are like, we're not going to work with ICE, we're just going to release them out there, it creates a mess. We're in a mess. And people are facilitating this. It's horrible. I mean, I'm truly waiting for a lot of these governors and mayors to be arrested because they are interfering with federal agents to get their jobs done, and they're writing ordinances to do it. I don't understand how in one breath you can say, we're here to support the citizens in our city. Are you? Or residents? They don't even call them citizens, or residents, right? But at the same time, you're allowing lawlessness. So which is it? Are you protecting people? Are you, basically supporting a lawless environment? I'm thinking the latter. Because see, when the wrong people get hurt, the wrong people get hurt. Then it's like, oops, I guess we should have, put that person in jail. I mean, that's how we got the Lincoln Riley Act. I live here in Georgia, and unfortunately that young woman, she lost her life just being outside. She was at college, she was outside, and this person that took her life, not only was he a fugitive from another state, because he started somewhere before he went to New York let him go, and then he came down here to Georgia. That's how we got the Lincoln Riley Act. Because someone who's undocumented, who is a criminal, who's here on our soil, who wasn't deported, because there were laws supporting people here that are non-citizens that are actual criminals, right? Saying, hey, you can't lock them up, can't put them away. They're being allowed to still commit crimes. And Tish says they're picking up non-criminals and good people. Well, yeah, they may be good people, but their intentions aren't great. Because here's the deal. If you interfere with a federal investigation and federal activity, it's called Title 18, Section 111. You can look this up. I've covered it on my show. You can go to prison, federal prison, for up to 5 years or more and be fined if you interfere. Now, if you're blowing the whistle on the side of the road and you're making it difficult, that's one thing. But when you're jumping on the cars and you're standing in front of the cars and you don't know what's going on, I don't consider anybody here good if you're undocumented here, because we have over 300 legal ports of entry. We have a way for a legal path to citizenship. Why aren't you taking it? That's my question. What are we doing? We cannot say that we are a nation of laws and then allow people to break the law. It's either one or the other. We're either lawless or we're lawful. And I have no tears for anybody who's come here illegally. My concern is for people coming here illegally that are getting abused, right? Because they think they're coming here for a better life and they end up in sex trafficking and all other kind of craziness, right? It needs to stop. And the only way to stop it is to say, okay, we are a nation of laws. You need to leave so that we can become a better country. We cannot become a better country allowing lawlessness. It doesn't work. Imagine your own household. Okay. People in your house, they're just running amok. You're like, look, you need to calm down. We got stuff to do. You cannot just run around and do whatever you want. Let's just say. Okay. But then you let a few of them still run around doing whatever they want to do. But you got like the majority of the people like, calm down. The majority of the people are going to be like, why are you allowing them to still run around and do whatever they want to do? Why aren't they abiding by the rules just like we are? Yeah. It takes a different perspective when it's in your house. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Would BOFA be the best approach? You need to understand that. You need to explain that further to me, Mr. Zleback. I'm not sure what BOFA means. But now, there are talks of DHS offering people like, you keep saying BOFA. I don't know what that means. You need to spell that out. DHS, they're offering people $3,000 to leave, right? So that they will have the opportunity, once they wait their time in their country, to come back legally. I respect that. Because that actually gives time for vetting, right? Making sure that people are in alignment with our laws, because it can take up to 5 years or more just to attain legal citizenship here. And the reason why it takes so long is because people have to be vetted. You have to make sure that people are in alignment with our laws. We can't just allow people over here because they want to be here. That's not how this works. And it doesn't work that way in any other country. Like Qatar, you can't become a citizen of Qatar. You can live there. You can work there. But you can't become a citizen. Like they just don't, that's their policy. Like, no. You will never be a citizen of Qatar, but you can live here. I had my cousin. She stayed there for a short time. But here's the thing. She was a single mother here in America. She got a job in Qatar. Wonderful, right? Yeah. But she couldn't work there or even be there unless she had a husband. I mean, at the time, she was in a relationship and they were on the road to get married. right? And they just so happened to have gotten married before she went over to Qatar. But yeah, she couldn't be there unless she was married. And then, of course, unfortunately, the relationship didn't last. And when she got a divorce, guess what? She had to leave Qatar because she could not be there and be a single woman living in Qatar. They were like, you gotta go. You can't be here. Mm-mm. So that, to me, that's tight. Okay, they're not allowing it. You can't be a citizen there. And like I said, if you're a woman, you have to be married. You cannot be a single woman there in Qatar. Like that's their policy. That is their rules. That's their law. Now, what if we had laws like that here in America? Oh my gosh, people would lose it. What? What do you mean I have to be married? What do you mean? Takes on a whole different meaning when you start seeing how other people run their countries and how loosely we run ours. And it shouldn't be that way. It really, really shouldn't. Let's see. Another thing that I wanted to get into was this. So the U.S. GDP grew at 4.3% annual rate. Delayed government report shows. Okay. So the U.S. gross domestic product grew at a 4.3% annual rate in the third quarter. Okay. According to a Commerce Department report that was delayed due to the government shutdown. So for the details, the 4.3% growth in the July to September quarter was the most rapid economic expansion in 2 years for the U.S., largely due to increased government and consumer spending. Okay. And the Wall Street Journal, which is center bias, reported that robust spending was focused largely on services like healthcare and products like recreational vehicles. Interesting. So, for context, the data reveals an average annual economic growth rate of 2.5% since Donald Trump began his second administration, staying on par with the 2.4% average growth under former President Biden's administration. So that's good. At least we haven't gone lower than the 2.4%. So kudos to Biden, kudos to President Donald Trump. So, how the media covered it, both Wall Street Journal and Associated Press left noted some economists remaining concerns due to the job market, right? As the February unemployment rate rose to 4.6%, the highest it's been since 2021. The Associated Press attributed the low fire rate of the job market partially to uncertainty over Trump's tariffs. Outlets on the right, on the other hand, often attributed the GDP growth to Trump in their headlines. The Daily Wire, which is right, wrote the headline, "Trust in Trump." White House touts economic growth as third quarter numbers shatter expectation and included Trump's True Social post in the coverage. The Washington Examiner, that leans right, called the third quarter acceleration a boost to Trump. Well, some of the job growth was definitely lower because they weren't hiring people in the federal government. They're actually firing people in the federal government. They're actually shrinking it. So under Biden, I know, like, I want to say seemed like it was 22 or maybe 23. They hired like more IRS agents, but it was ballooning government. It wasn't like it was a private sector employment boom. Right. Now, we might get an employment boom with these data centers going on all around the country and some of the other AI programs that are going to start developing. I know they're going to start making chips over here, the CHIPS program. Automobiles are going to start making those. So manufacturing is going to go up. So there's going to be jobs there, but that's going to be over time. I don't think those things are going to be overnight changes, right? Just checking, making sure nobody's requesting a mic. But yeah, so I'm glad that the GDP has gone up and it's been stabilized. I'm glad that, the Biden administration, they were able to stabilize. But again, the executive administration isn't ballooning. So they're not hiring more people in government. They're actually trying to allow the market, in essence, to fix itself, which is a good thing. I'm okay with that. I'm definitely okay with that. Yeah. We all know about the whole Epstein files thing. It's just so sad that that's going on. So we're going to take a quick break. And again, I'm going to give you guys the opportunity. If you want to join me, email me at unfilteredvisionnews@gmail.com to get a link, or send me a direct message on X and I can send you a link to the show. And with that, we'll take a short break and I'll see you guys on the other side.
At All Sides, we believe we give bias ratings for hundreds of media outlets. By freeing people from filter bubbles and providing different perspectives, we can all be better equipped to understand the world and each other. So how do we do it?
And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me here on Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern. My name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols, and I will be your host. So today will be our last broadcast of the week. We're going to celebrate Christmas and the day after Christmas, and next week is going to be a short week as well. But I do have a great announcement. I will be launching an app on December 26th, the day after Christmas. I'm really excited about that. And you'll be able to view the long form content like this. And I'll be making other long format content videos that you won't be able to see just online. They will be private only to those of you that subscribe to the app. So I definitely want to get a pulse, as they call it, a pulse check. Let me know in the comments, like what you would pay monthly for a service like this to get you news that's unfiltered, get you news that keeps you informed on just different topics that you're not necessarily going to hear on the mainstream media, and really going in depth and looking at all of the twists and turns that we have going on in the world. So today we've covered, unfortunate fraud, how it's been carried out, and how, a lot of these nonprofit organizations, I won't say all of them, but some of them, have really taken advantage of, being able to enrich themselves off of the struggle of others. And I'll use struggle in that sense of homelessness. Homelessness hasn't gotten any better in recent years. It's actually gotten worse. And, can that be attributed to some of the migration process? It could be, but we had homelessness before the mass migration that we had over the past 5 years. Homelessness has been a problem for a long time. But, it start when people were released from mental asylums and institutions. We never talk about having those services anymore for people that are suffering, right, with mental instability. Where are the facilities for them? It wasn't a good idea to just release people that needed to be supervised and, on certain medications so they wouldn't do harm to themselves or others. They were just released on the street and not cared for. And that's when it definitely comes around to, supporting and loving up on your fellow man. And definitely during this time of year, we want to do that, right? It's the holidays, it's cold. We want to look out for people who are in a worse situation than we are. But again, homelessness is big business, and it was proven, right? Just by some of the video examples that I've shared with you today. So with that, we're going to end the stream, since I do not have anybody who wants to come up on the stage to speak before we have our holiday break. For those of you that celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas. For those of you that celebrate Hanukkah, Happy Hanukkah. For those that you celebrate Kwanzaa, Happy Kwanzaa. And then again, for anybody who's just celebrating a holiday, for it to be the holiday Festivus for the rest of us. And I want to thank you guys for joining me here on Unfiltered Vision News. Again, the app will be dropping on December 26th. We're going to have a short week this week. We're going to have a short week next week. And then, of course, going into the holidays, that's another announcement I needed to make. We are going to, for the month of January, we'll be starting the show at 7:30 a.m. as opposed to 7 a.m. So we'll be here at 7:30. So I'll make another announcement about that next week, just to keep you guys informed. And again, thank you so much, everybody that joins me here every morning from 7 to 9. Thank you, YouTube subscribers, for getting us to 150 subscribers by the end of the year. So grateful for the growth and the love, and sometimes not the love, right? Not everybody likes you. Not everybody likes what you have to say, but I do appreciate those of you who do give me your comments, right? Not necessarily in a combative way, but you do challenge, like, well, what about this and what about that? And I appreciate that. I'm definitely all about having discussions, right? Even if we don't agree, we don't have to agree on everything, but let's be respectful, right? In how we treat one another. So again, thank you and happy holidays. I hope you guys have a great one. And remember, stay well, stay focused, and stay unfiltered. We will see you on Monday.